Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. October 19th, 2017.
The Kuhner Report, presented by Kelly Financial Services. This is the Kuhner Report.
Now the liberal media plays the race card. You knew it was coming, my friends. Just when you thought the mainstream media literally could not go any lower, they just did. And so, led by CNN, MS Left BC, they're all now claiming that the reason why, allegedly, President Trump was insensitive, was disrespectful to the widow of the slain soldier, Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, was because, you guessed it, they're African American. They're black. And so CNN, in a new low for them, I swear to you, you couldn't make this stuff up, all day yesterday into this morning, keep looping and looping and looping the pictures of Mashia Johnson, the widow of Sergeant Johnson, crying over a draped coffin. I got to say, it really is heartbreaking when you see it, crying over a draped coffin, and they keep looping it and looping it and looping it as if President Trump is to blame, as if somehow President Trump is responsible for the death of Sergeant Johnson and 3 other Green Berets who were ambushed by ISIS on patrol in the African country of Niger. And not only are they playing the race card on that front, what is even more despicable is now they're interviewing white widows of slain soldiers who say, oh, we got phone calls from President Trump and he was warm and gracious and courteous. And so, of course, the implication is split screen. There is the widow crying of Sergeant Johnson, who happens to be black. And, of course, the white widows were given great respectful treatment by the president. In other words, white soldiers, white widows, Trump loves them. If they happen to be minority or people of color, Trump disrespects them. You know, I've got to say this, my friends. I knew the media was evil. I really did. And I know that when Trump came out and said the mainstream media is the enemy of the American people, it was at first shocking. And there are some good journalists. I cited them yesterday. John Solomon on the Hill, Sarah Carter, and others who are doing really good work. But I got to tell you, those that are now exploiting the death of Sergeant Johnson to simply score political points to try to demonize Trump really are now earning that epithet. They really are showing that they are nothing more than sick, twisted, depraved partisans who are willing to pervert anything in order now to destroy and bring down Trump. Even to exploit the death of a hero like Sergeant Johnson and the grief and heartbreak of the widow and of the family. And so I want you all to just think about this for a second, okay? Here is a president who has done something that no other president has done. Not Obama, not Bush, not Clinton, not George H.W. Bush. He has tried to go out of his way to call every Gold Star family. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. Obama didn't. I'm not blaming him. Just, people died in Afghanistan. You cannot call every person who died or was killed in combat. You just can't. Bush didn't. Again, I don't blame him. You just can't. So most often they wrote letters. Again, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just stating a fact. But here he is going out of his way to try to call every member of a Gold Star family to express his condolences, to thank them for their service, their sacrifice, and their bravery. And now this is being used against him? And the only way that you can possibly try to turn a 5-minute call in which the President of the United States says to a widow, this is what he signed up for, and I know it hurts anyway. It doesn't matter that he signed up for it. It still hurts anyway. The only way you can twist and distort and pervert that into somehow meaning, as the media now and the Democrats are trying to claim, that, well, he bears sole responsibility. Sergeant Johnson bears sole responsibility for what happened. Hey, he signed up for it. Blank off. He got what he deserved. You have to really be blinded by your hatred for Trump. You have to really, no, seriously, you have to really try to sell to the American people that this man in the White House is a sociopathic, evil monster, an absolute monster. And if that's the case, how come no one else has complained? How come they're all coming out? It doesn't matter what their background is, white, Hispanic, black, saying President Trump called us. He was very respectful on the phone. You could feel how much it meant to him, how sorry he was. He was courteous. He was warm. He was gracious. He was sympathetic. So how come now, all of a sudden, you're trying to turn one phone call? And listen to this. It's not even the call. The congresswoman who was in the car with the widow, what she was doing there is beyond me, but let that go, okay? She's basically mini Maxine. Okay, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. She's basically a mini Maxine. She's Maxine Waters with a cowboy hat. That's it. Okay, that's what she is. A rabid never-Trumper who has been calling for Trump's impeachment since March, who has called him a racist, a bigot. She's called him every name in the book. This is a woman who refused to even go to his inaugural. So she has a political agenda to bring this president down. She's not objective in all this. She's in the car, and she even admits that she didn't hear the whole 5-minute conversation. That she just heard the one part where he says allegedly, which he disputes and his staff disputes because they overheard the conversation, but let that go for the sake of argument. Where he says, you know, it's what he signed up for, but it still hurts, and it doesn't change the fact that it hurts. And she says she claimed that she heard that part of the conversation, but she didn't hear much else. It was on speakerphone. And from that, she's the one that runs to CNN, runs to MSNBC, runs to the New York Times, and says he disrespected the widow. He's disrespecting Sergeant LaDavid Johnson. He's the one that he's cold-hearted. He's an animal. He's got no feelings. He's insensitive. This guy's a complete sociopath. She's smearing him and calling him every name in the book. You're the one that ran out to the media. You didn't even hear the whole conversation. You haven't even heard the whole context. So if you don't even know the context and you didn't even listen to the full 5 minutes, lady, what are you doing flapping your mouth? But now it's getting even worse. It's getting even worse. You want to talk about the fever swamps. And mark my words, my friends. Let me tell you what's going to happen, okay? Today, 12/14, you can hold me to it. You hold me to it. Trump will win re-election. I'm going to say it again. Donald J. Trump will win re-election in 2020 because Trump derangement syndrome is going to bring down the Democratic Party and bring down the left because they are now behaving in such an irrational, frankly insane, unhinged fashion that the country is going to say, whatever we think about Trump, those guys on the other side, they're really nuts. Now it is taking off, led by Frederica Wilson, Congresswoman Wilson, that the death of LaDavid Johnson, Sergeant Johnson, is Trump's Benghazi. I swear to you, she's saying it, the Democrats are saying it, CNN is now repeating it. It's like an echo chamber. Here is Congresswoman Wilson on The View, and the whole audience, listen to them just erupt when she says, this is Trump's Benghazi. Roll it.
I want to know from Mr. Trump, what happened to LaDavid in Niger? Why was he the last one found? Why did it take 48 hours for them to discover him? Why wasn't he in a car, an armored truck? Why did he have weapons weaker than the terrorist weapons? Why were they able to surround them and kill them? This is going to be Mr. Trump's Benghazi, because I cannot get the answers. Nobody can get the answers. And until we get those answers, it is his Benghazi, and this whole thing about what he said to the widow is a cover-up.
I just want to say one thing.
I told you she's Maxine Waters with a cowboy hat. The woman, it's like, they were building clones of Maxine Waters. This is one of the first clones that just didn't work, kind of malfunctioning. And they said, let's throw a cowboy hat and Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. You don't get crazier than this. Okay, I swear, where to begin? What cover-up? You're the one. You're the one that ran to the media and said he disrespected Sergeant Johnson's family and the widow and everybody. The only person that made a big story out of this was you. So what distraction from Niger, what happened, you're the one. You're the one that ran to the media, not Trump. You. Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two, I don't know how to say this, lady, but this is a pretty obvious fact. They were on patrol with military forces from the government of Niger hunting ISIS terrorists. Soldiers die in war. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, they were there at the invitation of the Niger government. They needed help. They're fighting an Islamist insurgency. And so they were there and they were ambushed. Now, why didn't they have the armored vehicles, etc.? Well, because they were kind of in the mountains, and in other words, the armored vehicles couldn't fit. That's number one. But, since you're mentioning about funding and everything, who do you think gutted the military? Congresswoman Wilson. Minnie Maxine. The dear leader.
Stupidly.
The dear leader. But it gets even richer. It gets even richer. Do you know who has consistently voted against veterans' benefits and increased military spending for the last 6 years in Congress? You guessed it, Minnie Maxine. Congresswoman Wilson. She's the one who's trying to claim to be a champion of veterans. She's voted against military benefits and veterans' benefits for 6 freaking years. In fact, listen to this. When they had the government shutdown, remember that a couple years ago? Both parties said, look, we want to make sure that veterans and especially their families after they've died, that they get proper burial benefits and all kinds of other benefits. So let's exempt the VA from a government shutdown. At the time, 4 American soldiers were killed in Afghanistan. They couldn't get money because of the government shutdown. They had to be buried. The families were owed each $100,000. Do you know who voted against those 4 families getting the money to bury their dead and get their veterans benefits? She voted against them. Minnie Maxine. She wouldn't even vote for them to get a freaking funeral and burial. And she's lecturing us and Trump about how to treat military families and widows of the slain soldiers with respect. Hey, Lady, blank off.
This is going to be Mr. Trump's Benghazi because I cannot get the answers. Nobody can get the answers. And until we get those answers, it is his Benghazi. And this whole thing about what he said to the widow is a cover-up.
1226 here on the great WRKO. So, that's Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, i.e. Mini Maxine, or basically Maxine Waters with a cowboy hat, just unloading on The View, claiming now that the reason why Trump called the widow and disrespected her, allegedly, was part of a massive cover-up to prevent the truth from being found out about what happened in Niger with the 4 Green Berets being killed by ISIS terrorists. That's the state of the Democratic left right now. You can see the full audio and even the video, right, Jared?
Yeah, the video's up on WRKO.com and the Facebook page.
It's up on our Facebook page, WRKO.com. You want a good laugh for lunch? Take a look at it and then pass it along to your friends. Let's go to Skippy in South Boston. Go ahead, Skippy.
Hi, Jeff. Sounds like Congresswoman Freaka, never Trumper. Sounds like she rushed into the story, and ingratiate herself with the widow and fabricate this false narrative, like along the lines like Al Sharpton or Maxine Waters was. And who are also all never Trumpers. But again, who's to say that the widow, and then we all feel her sorrow, but who's to say that the widow's not also a never Trumper and is going along with the story? And did Congresswoman Freaka, did she reach out to the 3 other families of the other soldiers killed in Niger? I doubt it. The race card is her very existence.
Well, Skippy, look, you nailed it. That's what she's like. Maxine Waters. She lives and dies by that race card. She loves that race card. All she does is play that race card. She's played it against Trump for really the last 9 months. She wouldn't even attend his inauguration. And look, I go back to the point that I exposed in my monologue. She claims to be for the veterans. She claims to be for the widows. She claims to be for the military. Yet her voting record, all she did was vote against veteran benefits. To the point of, I'm not kidding, you had 4 soldiers killed in Afghanistan. It was during the government shutdown. And they said, look, because the government's been shut down, it's $15,000 for burial and funeral costs. They can't bury the poor slain, the slain soldiers. Never mind the $100,000 that the families, they get as part of their benefits package. Her vote, niet. She wouldn't even pay for them to be buried. And now she's telling us about what's sensitive and what's respectful behavior? Oh, please. Chuck in Danvers. Go ahead, Chuck.
Hi, Jeff. I know you're up against it, but I love you, buddy. You're great.
Thank you.
Real quick question, and I just remember the old days when premise A plus premise B equals conclusion. Well, they've lost all that. What would motivate a president to go out of his way to make a phone call to a slain soldier's wife just to insult them?
You nailed it. I mean, you nailed it. Like, just think about it. Why would he do that? Like, politically, what does he gain from that? Nothing. Now, if you're trying to claim, and this is what the left's trying to claim, that he's so unhinged, he's so evil, he's so monstrous, he's so cold, he's so insensitive, that this is just how he just doesn't care about people, right? He almost calls and taunts the widows. Hey, your husband deserved it. Hey, your husband bears sole responsibility. How come he hasn't done that to any other Gold family member? They're all coming out, all of them saying, no, he called me, very respectful, very gracious, very... So, in other words, they're trying to paint a picture, a narrative, that is literally 180 degrees from the truth. CNN, fake news, you just hit a new low. Let's take it to Jackie Murphy in the newsroom.
This is going to be Mr. Trump's Benghazi.
1237 here on the great WRKO. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, I don't normally do this, but I read this piece on the Daily Caller. You know, I don't normally just read from columns. I usually paraphrase it myself in my own words. But I thought this was so moving and so powerful and frankly so pertinent to the debate that we're having right now about whether Trump was insensitive, to the remarks of the widow of that slain soldier, Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, and the way the media is trying to exploit his death and the widow's grief to try to smear and demonize Trump. And I just want to read parts of it to you, because I think it's just so spot on. The piece is written by Jenna Green. And here's just the title. My dad was killed in action in Iraq. Here's why we shouldn't bicker over phone calls. And so as she's basically comes out saying, look, that Representative Frederica Wilson, the mini Maxine, should really be ashamed of herself. And whatever you think about Trump's comments or were they taken out of context or not, and she says, what's really sickening is, quote, warping the tragedy of a fallen soldier into a PR stunt is lower than low. It's dismal. And she says that she can certify this firsthand because when she was 10 years old, her father was a Marine Corps helicopter pilot, and he was killed by hostile fire in 2004 in Iraq. So she says, I lost my father in Iraq when I was 10. And she says when he died, because at the time he was one of the highest ranking soldiers to die in Iraq, quote, the press surrounded our house for days, hoping to get a glimpse of the newly bereaved family. Flowers, cards, and casseroles poured in. Now, here is the part that I think is really pertinent to the debate that's going on, and I think really shames the entire mainstream media. Quote, we received exactly one letter written and signed by President Bush and the First Lady. We didn't get a phone call from the president, and we didn't expect to. It was not protocol for the commander-in-chief to personally phone a Gold Star family. She goes on to say, I know dozens of families who have lost loved ones in the war since 2004. None of them have received phone calls from Bush or Obama. It wasn't protocol, and still isn't, to call families after the death of their soldier unless it is, in caps, very high profile. And in that case, you'll probably meet the president in person at Dover to receive the remains together. Now, this is the part that to me is frankly very moving. Almost had me in tears last night as I read this. And I can personally guarantee you that a phone call is the last thing on a family's mind after they learn their soldier won't be returning. Do you know what I was thinking about when I was 10 and just learned about the death of my father? My safety, my family's safety, how we were going to pay for college without him there, who was going to walk me down the aisle when I got married someday. I wasn't sitting by the phone waiting for the president to drop a line. The fact that Trump is even attempting to call every new Gold Star family is itself honorable. It's one of the toughest things a president can do, to turn the ultimate sacrifice into a war of words is nothing more than salt in the wound. Deceased soldiers deserve our utmost respect, and bickering over this kind of protocol rarely ends well. I'm going to go even further than her. I want to actually commend Jenna Green for writing this piece and sharing her thoughts. I thought it was beautifully written, very eloquent. I would go, frankly, even further. I think it's disgusting. I think what Congresswoman Wilson is doing is disgusting. I think how she's trying to deliberately inflame, fabricate, and manipulate the phone call, to turn this into an opportunity to punch Trump in the face is, to me, utterly deplorable. It is despicable. For CNN to now turn this into a race issue, trying to imply that the reason why he was allegedly disrespectful was because that Sergeant LaDavid Johnson was black and other widows are white. I think what the media is now doing is, to me, literally the lowest of the low. Sergeant LaDavid Johnson was an American hero. He knew the risks when he signed up, and that's what makes his sacrifice even grander, because it shows his courage and his bravery and his patriotism, that he was willing to lay down his life, if need be, to protect our freedoms, yours, mine, and even Mini Maxine with a cowboy hat. And for the media to do what they are now doing, honestly, they are the enemy of the people. They really are. They really are. And let me just say something else, because you're going to hear about this on this show probably in the next couple of days. I've been told by the family not to say anything. I want to respect their wishes. But as I mentioned on yesterday's show, somebody very, very close to the Kuhner report has recently passed away. A giant. It's not Bill Cooksey. People are saying it's Bill. It's not Bill Cooksey. It's somebody who has been an incredible friend and ally since the beginning. This person passed away on Sunday because of a heart attack. I don't know how I've powered through this week. I'll be very honest with you. I have been in mourning myself. It has been very tough for me to do these shows. We're going to hopefully have a funeral, and a beautiful one for him next week. But he's going to be leaving behind 2 children. One of them is 11 years of age. Let me tell you what everybody is thinking right now. When I spoke to his grieving wife, what are we going to do about the 11-year-old? The other one is 20. It's bad to lose a father at 20. Grace lost hers at 21. But 21 is not 10 or 11. To lose your father at such a young age is going to leave a scar for the rest of your life. The time together, the seminal, pivotal role that a father plays in a child's life. As she points out, who's going to provide for us? Who's going to protect us? Who's going to be there for us? Daddy's not coming home. Daddy's never going to come home. What about college? What about on the happiest day of my life when I get married? Who's going to walk me down the aisle? Who's going to be there, God willing, when we have children? My father will never be there with me for all of the key seminal moments of my life. And instead of thinking about this poor widow has 2 children and she's pregnant with the 3rd. Instead of thinking about her and her little kids and what they're going to have to do now, the one in her womb, the one won't even remember his father because he or she never got the chance to see LaDavid Johnson, Sergeant Johnson. And you want to turn this into one more anti-Trump bashing festival on TV? Even this you have to exploit and politicize? Even this. Even now, phone calls to widows of slain soldiers. You have to twist and distort and manipulate and take out of context. And then play the race card to inflame African Americans, to somehow claim this man is a racist when he clearly isn't. Honestly, there's no words to describe how abhorrent this behavior is. And that's why I think President Trump is 1,000% correct to not let this smear and libel stand, to fight back with everything that he has. And I got to say something else, really. I'm appealing now to the liberals, the progressives, and the Democrats. Have you no decency? Have you really, honestly, I have to ask you this. Have you really no decency? You want to oppose him, oppose him. Oppose him on the wall, oppose him on tax cuts, oppose him on Obamacare, oppose him on whatever you want to oppose him on. But we're talking about kids who've lost their father. Have you no decency? Really, honestly, have you no shame? 617-266-6868. Frank in Newton. Go ahead, Frank.
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Frank?
Kind of takes a lot of the steam out of what I was going to say, but the long and the short of it, every time I see this ingrate, and that's, I think, the kindest description I can give to her right now, I think of nothing but howdy doody. And, it might sound ridiculous, but I can remember her, I can remember his sidekick. And that was none the less but Buffalo Bob. So I'm going to take the masculinity out of it. I'm going to call her Buffalo Boob, because she is really, we've got to do something in this country. We've got to start ensuring that when we hire people in Congress, that they have an IQ. That's a prerequisite. Before anything is done, before you serve a day, before you get a paycheck, you must have an IQ. Anything less than that is criminal. And this woman is absolutely criminal. I cannot for the life of me understand why this brotherhood of Democrats have stood fast with her. If that was a Republican, and I can remember a rep by the name of Foley out of Florida, who lost his job because of a untoward moment in his life. And the Republicans came down on him and forced him out of office. Yet you have an ingrate like this, and nothing is said. Pelosi keeps quiet. Obama keeps quiet. Chuck the Schmuck Schumer keeps quiet.
Oh, they love her.
With this kind of verbosity, they keep quiet. They say nothing. They would have said nothing in World War II. That's the real story with that group of pigs.
Thank you for that call, Frank. No, they're egging her on. They love it. And then she shows up at all these media interviews. I'm telling you, she's like a clown with the ridiculous, over-the-top, almost rodeo cowboy hat.
Howdy doody, doody doody, ho ho ho!
With these massive sunglasses. And there she is saying, I heard him. He was disrespectful. I heard him. He was insensitive. I heard him. This is his Benghazi. And all I'm thinking is, don't they have basic? No, really. It's time for a basic IQ test. And I'm thinking, what, Jared? 70? 65? You got to have an IQ of 65 or 70. Let's say 70. You don't get over 70, you're out.
Doody doody ho ho ho! Well, howdy doody, kids.
WRKO.
Dan in Woburn, you're up next. Go ahead, Dan.
Jeff, it's almost complete mental illness with the left these days. I mean, they're creating people that are completely hypersensitive, and then they're almost in an alternative universe where no matter what you say, they're deeply offended by it. It's maddening from a logical standpoint.
Well, now this is Trump's Benghazi, Dan.
And I don't understand why the guy was shot over there. He was back in the homeland. I guess America's not the only racist place we want to talk about racism. It's amazing. He should have been welcomed with open arms over there.
Dan, thank you for that call. Notice they never talk about the racism all over the world. It's only us. Only in America is it racist. I mean, it's unbelievable. But no, to me, it's the audience. Jared, just play the audience clapping, cheering. Like, this lunatic compares what happened in Niger with those 4 special forces to, like, literally Benghazi. And look, they're going nuts.
This is going to be Mr. Trump's Benghazi, because I cannot get the answer. Nobody can get the answer. And
Ay, ay, ay.
Even Whoopi, Uber Super Moonbat Whoopi was like, whoa, lady, what are you, whoa.
No, Jared, I agree with you. Even Uber lefty Whoopi Goldberg's like, whoa, easy now. Lou in Rhode Island. Go ahead, Lou.
How you doing, Jeff? It's at least good for a Democrat to finally admit that Benghazi was a big screw-up, and we all know who screwed that up. So good for her. But anyway, here's a couple points I want to make, and the last one is my big one. Number one, we got to remember James Foley and what Obama did there. Number two, the rules of engagement under Obama and led to many, many military deaths in Afghanistan that were unnecessary. And finally, here's the big one. The big one is that poor soldier, David Johnson. He and all the rest of them who died, they died for America, the American people, the Constitution, the flag, and the national anthem. And there they are, all these ridiculous nutheads, nutball NFLers, are kneeling, dishonoring this poor man, this soldier, this brave soldier, and all the other ones who have died not only in this war, but in other wars throughout our history, to preserve her freedom, this nutball's freedom, the freedom of the American people and the Constitution, and to protect America. And that's the ones they are disgracing, and I bet she cheers for those kneelers.
You're completely right, Lou. And by the way, brilliant point. I mean, what the hell? I mean, why don't you take a knee at the airport? I mean, come on, guys. You know, the body comes back in a draped coffin. Now, show the courage of your convictions. Take a knee. Because that's what you guys... You see, when you do that on Sundays, you're insulting the likes of LaDavid Johnson. That's what you're doing. So why don't you just do it at the airport? You phony, you fraud, you. Okay, my friends, jam-packed show. I'm telling you, got a lot to talk about. Coming up next, the Hillary-Russia bribery scandal. It heats up. Another major shoe has just fallen. And now the question is, will Mueller and Rosenstein be able to keep their jobs? That story, so much more. Don't touch that dial.
The voice of Boston is you. 680 WRKO Boston, 93.7 WEEI HD2 Lawrence, Boston. It's 1 o'clock.